Okay, back once again to handle UFN 117, aka UFN Japan. UFC Saitama, I suppose, is another name I've seen going around. This is not a good card. I know I've said this before, but there is literally there's no magnitude to the main card. Not remotely so. Not a ton of interesting fights that are going to shape the future of the promotion in any way. There's some interesting action fights that I think are going to be fun, but that's really the extent of it. It was supposed to be the OSP Shogun rematch, which we're not getting now. We're getting OSP versus Yushin Okami. I'm happy to see Yushin Okami back, but he's fighting a weight class above where he should be, and honestly hasn't done anything on the outside of the UFC that makes me think that he's reinvented himself in any way that's going to allow him to handle that kind of thing. But let's get down to business, I suppose. As per usual, we have a nice background for everybody. It's the dragon again. I'm thinking I'm going to rotate that in and out a couple times, do some other things, fantasy stuff, sci-fi stuff, whatever I find is cool at the time. So we're going to open up with Daichi Abe versus Hungun Lim. Abe is a defensively porous fighter. He kind of lures you into a false sense of security because he'll actually win a lot of fights by ironically just getting hit and kind of letting you feel comfortable and then kind of upsetting you with a counter punch or something because he's got good power in his hands, but he's a little small for the division. I think Lim is properly sized welterweight and has a lot of power that I don't think Abe's chin can actually handle, because I wouldn't classify Abe in any way as a counter puncher, because what he's doing is not countering, he's just kind of catching you when you get careless, because he's eating a lot of shit. Like, a counter puncher to me is a much more defensively sound fighter than what Abe is. So Hungun Lim via TKO first round. Luke Jumo versus Shinzo Anzai. Shinzo Anzai I don't really trust in any way, shape, or form. He's, how do I put this nicely? He's not very good at what he's kind of supposed to be good at, which is he's supposed to be kind of a takedown artist, but he's way too willing to brawl. His takedowns are not necessarily the most effective in the world, and he's up against Luke Jumo, who has a lot of holes in his game. Not a great takedown defender, which is a point for Anzai, but very good at getting back to his feet, very good at utilizing his power. Like, what he's good at is actually UFC caliber. Not title contender, not ranked fighter, but decent kind of card filler, action fighter caliber. And Anzai's not even that. Jumo via second round TKO. I think he'll get taken down, but I think he'll get back to his feet. He can fight at a very, very attractive pace, ridiculously fast, and at some point he's just going to catch Anzai and put him down. Alberto Mina managed to finish Anzai, and Luke Jumo is a much better finisher than Alberto Mina. Continuing on up the card, we have Saruri Kondo versus Chan Mi Jung. I'm going to be blunt with this one. I've only seen highlight videos of Kondo. I've not seen any of her actual fights in totalitary. I know that I've actually seen her do more professional wrestling, ironically, than I've seen her fight. I've got nothing to say that she can win this fight. I'm going to go with Chen Mi-jun, who I've at least seen fight. I've at least have an idea of what she's good at, what she's bad at. I don't with Kondo. UCA Formiga versus Ulka Sasaki. Go with Formiga kind of all the way here. Sasaki has been a surprising fighter lately. He's kind of done better against guys like Wilson Hayes than I expected. He beat Justin Scoggins, who I did not expect him to beat. Honestly, scored a pretty good win against Willie Gates as well, but, losses to Taylor Lapalus and Leandro Issa dots that as well. Formiga's in a real tough spot. There's not a lot for him to do. He's got a pretty sneakily good striking game, very good grappler, etc. He's lost to, frankly, who he's going to lose to: the Ray Borgs of the world, the Henry Cejudos, the Joe Benavidez's, the John Dotsons. would lose to Demetrius Johnson if given a shot. But he's going to beat pretty much everybody else. And Ulka Sasaki definitely qualifies as everyone else. So Formiga, decision, moving on. Keita Nakamura versus Alex Morono. Interesting fight in its own way. Morono is a guy who wins fights in spite of himself. Like, he really, what he does should not win the fights that he's won against James Muntasiri and Kyle Noak. But Kyle Noak and James Muntasiri didn't take the fights that they could have won. He's coming off of his loss to Nico Price, which was overturned due to, I think it was marijuana, not a PED. I know it was drug-related, but I don't think it was a PED. He's an okay kickboxer, kind of fights really hard. I'll give him that very, very hard nose. Keita Nakamura is a sneakily good striker with sneakily good takedowns. Not a lot of particular impressiveness until you kind of get in there. I think he surprises a lot of people, and Morono's been pretty hard to surprise in that regard. I think he was to a degree surprised by Nico Price's physicality, but this would be a different kind of thing. I'm gonna go with Morono, but honestly, this fight could really go either way. Nakamura, I think, is a guy who's probably fading. Also a little bit small for welterweight, but could definitely surprise Morono, and I don't have a lot of faith in Morono. Mizuto Hirota versus Charles Rosa. This one's also pretty interesting. I gotta go with Rosa. I like Mizuto Hirota. I was a big fan of his on the Japanese scene, but since coming to the UFC, a lot of problems have been exposed in his game that what he was able to make use of with his kind of boxing, wrestling combination type deal, also apparently a sumo guy, on the independent scene, or on the lower scene, really hasn't translated to the UFC. Came into the UFC back in 2013, got beat by Ronnie Yaya and Rodrigo Dom, kind of was shown the door after that, has returned, had the draw with Toru Ishihara, who we're going to talk about later, and the loss to Cole, or the victory over Cole Miller and the loss to Alexander Volkanovski. But Volkanovski showcased what happens when you're just a better wrestler than him, and Cole Miller, to a degree, even shut down his game, which his game, I think, was designed for him to actually win that fight. So I'm going to go with Charles Rosa, who I just think physically has a lot more to offer. I don't think necessarily is more skilled than Hirota, really, in any regard, but the combination of his physical advantages with a pretty good takedown and grappling game should get Rosa the victory here. Teruto Ishihara versus Rolando D. I'm going with Ishihara, but he's firmly in my do not trust remotely camp. Watching him lose to Artem Lobov and Gray Maynard is, I have nothing. He's still got good power and good athleticism, and he's very explosive, and I think Rolando D is open to being exploded on and finished. So Ishihara. Gokhan Saki versus Enrique de Silva. Is Enrique de Silva, he's the Frankenstein, right? Yeah, Frank Weinstein. I'm going with De Silva to win by submission, just because there's nothing. Gokhan Saki has fought MMA once and lost, and I have no idea what he's done to seriously prepare really for this, or what he's going to really look at. This is your crossover fight where, Gokhan Saki could come out here and absolutely staunch him. He could do something like Andy Sauer did when he started doing MMA seriously, and really impress you with a takedown and grappling game that you had no idea that he would possess. Maybe he'll do that, but De Silva submission. Don't bet on this fight. Takanori Gomi versus Dunhum Kim, the maestro, not the stun gun. I can't pick Gomi in any fights at this point. He's done. If there is there are fighters that are more done than Takanori Gomi, I guess. Ken Shamrock, anyone. But in the UFC, Gomi is very, very done. 4-fight losing streak. Started off okay, losing to Miles Jury and Joe Lozon and Jim Miller, but now he's lost to John Tuck. I foresee Maestro getting on his back at some point and submitting him. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe fighting in Japan will give him that one last hurrah. Maybe there's something to it. Claudia Gadelha, Jessica Andrade. This is the most interesting fight on the card. Both of these girls have some cardio problems historically. They've fixed some of them in more recent fights. I see Gadelha being the better technical striker. I think people overrate Andrade's striking because of the power that she packs and the physical talent she packs, which are better. But her technical game and ability to put combinations together isn't really quite as good. These two both would be very helped by a 125-pound division, because a 125-pound division with them, plus like a Valentina Shevchenko, and then like Joanna Jędrzejczyk coming up to try and become a new 2-division champion. That could be very interesting. But Gadelha, better grappler, better take. I'm going with Gadelha to maybe catch Andrade second round and tap her out. But I'm super interested in this fight. I could see Andrade knocking out Gadelha. I could see what else could I see? I could see in addition to that, I could see Gadelha catching her. I could see Andrade actually submitting her with some kind of like more or less brute force choke, or even winning a decision. So this could go a lot of ways, but I'm gonna go with Gadelha to win a by submission. OSP Yushin Okami. I'm a big Okami fan. Despite the label of boring that he has and so on, I would love to pick him in this fight, because I am the furthest thing from an OSP fan that you could find on this planet. I find that his career is honestly a case of a guy who could have really been something, and because of his not wanting to seek out challenges and going to other gyms and being too comfortable at being a big fish in a small pond, and mentally having some just huge gaffes, has really tripped up and not been able to do his career proud. But he's a legitimate 205er. Okami is not, so he's a lot bigger, more athletic. Okami doesn't have catch-you power really in any kind of way, so I'm gonna go with OSP to win via like a TKO third round. Maybe it won't blow him out of the water, but it'll take like a bit for his just physicality to be just far too much for Yushin Okami. That highlights probably a really terrible like I said, I mean, Gadelha and Andrade, that's a super important fight and a super interesting fight. But aside from that, your next, other than that, you have like Rosa and Hiroto, which is kind of interesting, and Nakamura versus Morono, which is kind of interesting. Like, this is, well, I guess Formiga is always fun to watch fight. Ulka Sasaki's been delivering a little bit, but yeah, that's it. I mean, Gokhan Saki coming to maybe give MMA a serious try, but it's just I'm not looking forward to this. So that's the fight card. It is free, so you know there are things to enjoy. I mean, when your investment is $0, you can have some fun, but this is just not very good.